I think almost everything about Donald Trump and his campaign is on some level surprising. I mean, just on any given day, what he says or does not fit into normal patterns of our politics. So, on a broad level, I think, yeah, that's probably the most surprising thing. I tend to not be hugely surprised by Bernie Sanders. There is, you know, he's speaking to a set of issues that are real. They're not necessarily new. I mean, these are issues that have been around. And I think, the Democratic primary electorate is well tailored to a candidate like him. And in a lot of ways, he's sort of the perfect, if you were trying to create in a lab the perfect candidate to respond to a certain segment of Democratic primary voters, and also to create the perfect candidate to give the Hillary Clinton campaign fits, Bernie Sanders is probably it. So I think he sort of fits into a mold that there is some history for in the Democratic primary, and is somewhat less surprising. Maybe there are people who sort of assumed a coronation and assumed she was just going to walk, to whom that is surprising. I think most people who look sort of more closely at it are not as surprised by that. I think the one other thing, to me, in a lot of ways, it's less about the candidates, it's about some of the tools and tactics or sort of contours of the campaign system right now. The assumption was, in the new post-Citizens United world, that super PACs and the Koch brothers and all of this money would come pouring in, and that would be determinative of candidates. I'm not so sure that isn't still the case, but I would be somewhat surprised that Jeb Bush could raise all the money he did through the super PAC. Like I saw 97.5 or something like that, and that could be raised and spent as ineffectively as it was. I think is a surprising thing. I think.
Do you think it's the money itself or his utilization of it? Because at one point he was sending iPads with his campaign message to people.
I don't think it's the money itself. I don't think voters ultimately. I think voters do say they would like to see, the concept of money in politics is concerning to them, as it reasonably should be. But I think on an individual candidate level, it rarely actually connects back. I think it's pretty rare that you have voters who are responding negatively to Jeb Bush because he raised $100 million in the super PAC. That's not what causes the problem there. So I think it is how the money was spent. But I also think fundamentally it's the campaign, and when you say it's the campaign, that means it's the candidate, and the candidate's last name is Bush. I mean, there's a whole lot of noise and there's a lot of finger pointing going on about what happened in that campaign. At the end of the day, the sort of most fundamental, distill it down to its essence, it's his last name. It's those 4 letters that he could not change, and he could not figure out how to talk about. And created a really, difficult challenge for him, and rightly so. I mean, there's not a lot of warm feeling in this country for how the last Bush in office did. So it's not, in some ways, that is not altogether surprising the response to him. I think how that money could be raised and spent and do so little to help him solve that problem is surprising to me. I think the other surprise, just quickly, is, that you have a candidate like Donald Trump, not so much him specifically, because again, I think he speaks to a certain strand of American politics that's been around for a long time, and in pretty ugly ways for a long time, but that he's so successful to do it without spending any money, with very little money. I mean, it's a lie when he says he's self-funding his campaign, because he's actually raising small dollar contributions. But he's not spending anywhere close to what the other candidates are, and yet managing to achieve a media impact that any other campaign in the history of campaigns would die for. And that is a little bit surprising, that you found that he's been able to sort of do that. And I think it's a question of, is that just because he's got the residual value of having built his brand and his celebrity over so many years, or has he really cracked a code for how to campaign in a way that others can tap into? I don't know yet. I think it's probably more the former than the latter, but I don't think